In today's video, we're going to be discussing some updated NHL trade rumors. Now, the teams we're focusing on today include the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Edmonton Oilers, Vancouver Canucks, and the Vegas Golden Knights. We'll get into all the latest speculation coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned, we have some very new and interesting NHL trade rumors to discuss here today. Some of our more recent videos discussing some of the latest trade rumors have certainly been very interesting topics. And if you've missed either of those recently, I'll put a playlist up here in the YouTube card so you can check them out for when this video is complete here. So first of all, I want to get started with the Edmonton Oilers and the Vancouver Canucks and the possibility of them maybe swapping some bad contracts. It's something that we've kind of seen mentioned before, but with a couple of different events that's gone on here in the last little bit, it kind of makes me wonder if something that I might be able to possibly actually discuss here further length here. And once obviously we'll have to wait and see what happens with the Oilers GM job. That's not been finalized yet, so I don't really see much of anything going down with that franchise until that's all been sorted out. But we've heard from Milan Lucic recently through Vancouver radio indicating that he wouldn't rule out the possibility of finishing up his career with the Vancouver Canucks, which, you know, considering how long he has left on his contract with the Oilers and how poorly his play has gone, his production's been down, that would he even have the possibility of having another contract beyond that one for one. So getting to Vancouver as a free agent doesn't seem likely because of the amount of money on his contract. I don't see the Oilers buying him out. I could see him being traded and swapped for another bad contract though, which kind of brings us over to the Canucks side of things. We have reports indicating that Louis Eriksson, with an interview with a Swedish media outlet, was expressing his discontent of how things have gone in Vancouver and the fact he doesn't feel like he has the coach's full trust. His ice time has been down, gradually the last couple of years as well. So he was expressing in that interview basically how unhappy he was. So could we possibly see these two teams getting together and swapping contracts, one bad contract for another? I'm not sure it'd be an even deal though. There's a difference in age, there's a difference in contract length. So I'm not sure that's an even trade one for one. But either way, could either of them kind of benefit from a change in scenery? I don't think either fan base would be overly excited with a trade like that. But at the same time, you have to take a look and say, would a fresh start benefit either of them for sure? But it just seems kind of weird how they both kind of have the same type of scenario going on with their individual situations, and they both kind of express different things publicly here. That makes me think maybe a swap and change of scenery could benefit either one. Now, sticking with the Oilers here momentarily, there's another report I was reading from Mark Spector of Sportsnet indicating that he feels the Edmonton Oilers really should take a look at maybe trying to land a trade with the Toronto Maple Leafs this offseason. He feels like they should try to package defenseman Adam Larsson, who obviously is a right shot defenseman. They'd probably have to throw in a draft pick or a prospect. He didn't really specify, which one per se, but didn't trade that to the Maple Leafs in exchange for Kasperi Kapanen. Of course, we've discussed here at great length in a couple different videos recently the situation with the Leafs and their cap situation and all the contracts they have to do for this summer. They are going to have some tough questions to be answered, and obviously a forward like Kapanen or Janssen very well could find themselves traded to another team. Obviously, Kapanen would probably be a great fit as a winger for Connor McDavid. He's a tremendously fast skater. He's shown this year he can play with Austin Matthews and be quite productive as well. So he could certainly play the similar type of role for McDavid. Of course, the Leafs could benefit from getting a right shot defenseman in their lineup as well, a little bit more cost effective. So certainly a possibility. I wouldn't rule out the fact that those two teams might potentially hook up on a trade. Of course, at the deadline, there was reports they were discussing a Connor Brown trade as well, so that might very well be a forward that they might look to instead of Kapanen. But either way, it's certainly a possibility. They know they came very, very close at making a deal at the deadline, according to reports that we had at that point in time. So perhaps those talks will be revisited here later into the offseason, maybe by the draft, once the Leafs have a better idea of what's going on with their full situation, and we'll see what kind of deal that can be had. But it would not be shocking to see the Oilers and Leafs get together for a trade sometime during the summertime. Now, next up here, I want to discuss the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, they have some very interesting scenarios playing out in front of them here as well. Of course, we just had the news that they've changed general managers, that Kelly McCrimmon's been promoted from assistant GM to GM, and that George McPhee is now going to be the president of hockey operations. It really shouldn't come as a big surprise. Kelly McCrimmon has been getting a lot of interest from other NHL clubs for vacancies with their clubs. They've been inquiring at the Vegas to get permission to speak with him, and he doesn't really show a lot of interest to take any of those teams up on their offer. Really, from the get-go, it appears as though McCrimmon and McPhee have basically been co-managers, even though their titles didn't indicate that. There was an article today by Jesse Granger in the Athletic indicating that really from the beginning, McPhee's looked at him more like a co-GM than an assistant. In the beginning, they both took half the league each to scout and kind of determine players for the expansion draft. I think Kelly McCrimmon's played a much bigger role with the Vegas Golden Knights than many people realize, so this shouldn't come as a big surprise. This is really more of a paper transaction. Give him a title change, probably an increase in pay to kind of make sure that he stays on board there. He's a great hockey man, and it's certainly not a surprise that they'd want to hang on to him for sure. I know when Mark Stone was traded to Vegas, McCrimmon certainly played a big role in that as well. Obviously, McCrimmon and Stone go way back to his junior days. They worked together during his junior career. They're very close, and I don't imagine that Mark Stone would have been as quick to sign an 8-year contract extension with Vegas if he knew that there was a good chance that McCrimmon wouldn't be sticking around. But either way, that contract that they gave Mark Stone and Max Pacioretty and Paul Stastny in the offseason have certainly eaten up a lot of their cap space moving forward. And like other teams that we've discussed here recently, like the Lightning and the Leafs and the Jets, etc., they also have some very tough decisions to make when it comes to their salary cap situation. Now, the biggest name on their team that does not have a contract that needs one is William Karlsson. Now, Karlsson, of course, signed a 1-year deal last year as a restricted free agent after having a 40-goal season in their first year in the NHL. Of course, he did cool down a little bit this year, kind of leveled out a little bit, but he's still a very valuable member of their team. Certainly was a little bit more of a reasonable performance this year. Probably is going to keep his contract somewhat comparable to what he's getting paid this past year. Somewhere in that $5 to $6 million range would be what I would estimate. Maybe 6.5 at most, but certainly not the $8-9 million mark that was being discussed after he hit the 40-goal season 2 seasons ago. But either way, he needs a new contract, and they don't have any room. They're technically, based on this current year cap, they're actually already kind of maxed out, if not even over a little bit, for next year. Now, of course, the cap's expected to increase, but even with that increase, they're still basically going to be right at the max. They need to move money out to bring any money in, and that includes any players that don't have current contracts. So now I'm going to put a graphic up on the screen here just to show you as well what other contracts they don't have in place, players they need to look after or move on from this summer. Now, as you can see here, they have some UFAs in Derek Englund, Brandon Peary, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, and Ryan Carpenter. Of course, Englund and Bellemare have been there from the beginning and have been very important leaders for that team as well. Brandon Peary hasn't played all the time, neither has Ryan Carpenter, but it seems like all Peary does is score. Carpenter certainly fit in well after being a waiver wire pickup from the Sharks last year as well. Although given the circumstances in the forward depth and as well as their cap situation, I do think it's doubtful that Peary or Carpenter return. It is possible that they might try to do everything they can to keep Bellemare. He's been an important member of their penalty kill in their fourth line. So I can see them trying to work out, even if it's a short-term 1-year deal, maybe a 2-year deal at most, for a lower salary. They can try to find a way to squeeze that in. It will be tricky, but I'm sure they're going to want to work on that. Derek Englund, the same thing. If he's willing to take maybe a 1-year deal, for obviously he wouldn't be getting paid too much anyways, they might be able to work that out as well. I think they'll at least try hard to make it happen. From an RFA perspective, though, they do have Thomas Nosek, goalie Malcolm Subban, Gusev, and Schultz, who they just brought in here around the time of the playoffs as well. So certainly they're going to want to keep their RFAs, and right now they don't have room really for anybody. So who are the most likely players that Vegas decides to move out or move on from here in order to make room for the salary cap? Now, of course, they could choose to trade William Karlsson instead of signing him. That is a possibility, although I do think it's doubtful. I think he's fit in quite nicely there, especially with Riley Smith and Jonathan Marchessault. So I don't imagine they're going to want to mess around with that line's chemistry. So I fully suspect they would prefer to sign him and move out other players. Names that have come up, though, do include forward Cody Eakin. Of course, Cody Eakin's usually played a pretty solid bottom six role for them. Unfortunately, he's the guy that was nabbed for that major penalty in the playoffs, which ultimately cost them the game in the series. Even though the league did apologize for that call, still, I'm sure that would be not the greatest way for him to have his final moment as a Vegas Golden Knight. But either way, Cody Eakin's a name that's been brought up. I've also seen defenseman Colin Miller, who's still only 26 years old. He's a right-shot defenseman, which is certainly something a lot of teams are looking for. He's got a pretty fair contract as well. Signed at $3.8 million for 3 more years. Cody Eakin only has 1 more year in his deal of $3 million as well. So there's certainly pretty cost-friendly contracts that other teams would likely be willing to take on as role players. In Eakin's case, a bottom six forward. In Miller's case, probably a top 4 defenseman on a fair bit of teams as well, especially for being a right shot. I did see some mention about Ryan Reaves, but I really don't see that happening. Reaves is certainly a unique type of player. He's only got one more year on his contract. I do see him not likely getting traded. I don't think that would be a wise move based on how he plays and what he provides for them. It's just a little bit of a unique sample there, so I think Reaves is somebody they should hang on to. But Eakin and Miller are likely the most likely here to be moved out. And of course, the other guys that could be impacted are the guys with no contract. So that leaves us with like your Brandon Peary, your Ryan Carpenter, your Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, and your Derek England. So I mean, there's a lot of guys there that may not be back. But for the first time, we might see a fair bit of turnover here with the Vegas Golden Knights. But as we've seen, owner Bill Foley certainly is a fan of spending money and trying to bring this team a Stanley Cup early in its existence. He's not the type of owner that seems to be very patient. He wants to win now. He wants to get that Stanley Cup to Vegas as soon as possible. So certainly not your typical expansion franchise that's kind of easing in here and kind of building things up year after year. When you start off your first year being in the Stanley Cup Finals, that certainly puts a lot of pressure on you to kind of keep that up. Unfortunately, they had a first round exit this year, but I'm sure with the moves they're going to be looking to make here, they're going to try to come back stronger than ever next year and try to get back to where they were in season number 1. So of course, as always, I want to hear your thoughts and opinions down below in the comment section. Who do you see the Vegas Golden Knights moving out to in order to retain William Karlsson and to get their salary cap situation here settled? If you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.